Good morning and welcome to the Point. In just over 2 weeks, when you go to the polls or perhaps when you get your absentee ballot, you may be surprised to find that it's not just a Republican and Democrat running for that big office that you want to vote in. There could be as many as 5 candidates from a number of different parties. We've invited the so-called third party candidates to join us, and those who responded will be featured on this morning's program. Candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all the way up to the United States Senate will be featured this morning. We'll talk more about that, but first, let's get straight to our interviews. When people decide to run for office, it's a big undertaking. When you decide to run for office and you aren't a Republican or a Democrat in the state of Michigan, it's even a bigger undertaking because we were just talking about it, you don't have all the infrastructure that's built up for them. So what makes you run for this office? It's a big job.
Because I want to give the voters in Michigan a choice. Because right now you have a choice between a big spending, big government Democrat and a big spending, big government Republican, which is really no choice at all. I want smaller government, less spending, more money back to the people who earn it.
When you look at the libertarian ideal, it can be interpreted a lot of ways. We've talked with a number of libertarian candidates, and they have variants on how they see it. How do you see a libertarian administration? If you were successful in November, what would the governor's office look like? What would you like for government to start looking like? When you talk about smaller government, smaller how?
Well, Michigan has this practice of taking money from the many and giving it out to a chosen few. That's a recipe for cooking big government. I don't want to do that. I want to take less money from the people. I want to start downsizing because there are a lot of special interests in Michigan's government, and politicians have interests to keep those interests going. I want to eliminate those interests.
How do you go about that process? Again, understanding the uphill nature of the fight.
Like I said, making government smaller, eliminating some programs that don't work, like our Department of Corporate Welfare and all the little things that go with that. It makes it smaller so the special interests don't have that big of a target, and more money to the people so they can spend money the way they choose. Consumers grow an economy, not governments.
When you look at the slate of candidates that you have, and the Libertarians have fielded a lot of folks.
Oh yeah, we do every year.
On this ballot. How do you get that message out, knowing that, again, millions and millions of dollars will be spent by others, and those resources aren't necessarily available to the so-called third-party candidates?
No, they're not, but do you really need millions and millions and millions of dollars? I mean, I consider myself a bargain right now to a lot of people. Yeah, we don't have that. Our outreach efforts have to be redoubled. We do a lot on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all those things. But as far as having actual money to run television ads, run a lot of radio ads, no, we have to do a better job of raising money, but showing people that this is what your money is going to do. This is what your money is going to, it's going to go to ads or radio ads or getting the word out to people.
What motivates you to run for governor of the state of Michigan?
Well, my dad always told us when we were growing up that if you're going to complain about something, you've got to be willing to do something about it. And I found myself complaining a lot about government, so I said, well, then I better do something about it. So that's really what got me involved. I had voted Democrat a lot of years, but wasn't real happy there. And I started looking at the other parties, and libertarians seemed to be too much of an anarchist, and the taxpayers seemed to be too fanatical. And the Greens, I went into some of their meetings and found that, boy, we had some really divergent views, but everybody was willing to listen to each other, and actually still some of what were even might be considered the fringe views, and still the good parts out of that and combine it with something else. And I thought, wow, that's what it should be, where you hear other people's views, you combine them to get the best results, and so I got involved.
How would you describe the philosophy of the Green Party? Understanding not everybody within that party has that same philosophy, but kind of the core.
Well, and the core comes down to what they call the four principles. We believe in taking care of the planet. We believe in justice for everybody and a fair and equitable justice system. We believe that pretty much everything can be solved nonviolently, and that the people really should be the source of the government, not the other way around.
When you decided to run for governor, and I know that a bunch of your ticket mates are here as we do this interview, we're talking to a lot of you, you all go into it understanding that it's an uphill battle when you've got folks running for governor and senate that are going to spend tens of millions of dollars on those campaigns. So how do you combat that? How do you get in and work against that?
I work with a people-to-people campaign. We know that we don't have the money. We don't take the PAC money or the corporate money. We're strictly individual donations. But dealing with people-to-people, we've done little things like on my website. You can actually download files of different themes for a complete packet of here's how you throw a friends and neighbor gathering at your house. It's got everything from tickets that you can print out or invites rather to print out, to recipes for some snacks to serve, as well as all the political information on me and my stand on the issues. We can set that up, and we've done a few of them where if you register it in advance, we can arrange a web Skype session with your guests so they can ask me questions directly. And we get that way. Doing every little forum that we get invited to, I can get to on a people-to-people basis, and find that really works. Doing some door-to-door knocking, and I think you can have an impact there. I'm, for what it's worth, very proud that I got a notice from the Library of Congress that my website was one of the ones they're going to archive this year for a snapshot of politics in America. And so I figured it was interesting enough or different enough to keep going there. But I think that the two big parties, and the Republicans were a minor party once upon a time, let's face it, they have taken this attitude that most of the people are either dumb or apathetic, and that's why they don't get involved or don't pay attention. And the truth of the matter is, most people are just working real hard to keep a roof over their heads and to keep their families fed and hopefully keep a job or get a job. And so it doesn't leave as much time as maybe there once was to be involved in the community and take a hand in that.
Running for statewide office is a big undertaking. What made you decide to run?
Well, first of all, I do have some experience in running. I began by running for Congress as an anti-war peace candidate, which might be a little bit unusual for someone that holds the rank of major in the U.S. military and has traveled overseas in Germany and Africa, several African missions that I've participated in. But I did become very concerned. I frankly was a follower of Ross Perot, who said, let's not go to war for somebody else's, golden toilet seat, is what he actually said. And I know that we were hoping to catch up on the oil and that it would all be paid for, but of course, that never happens, and I'm afraid that we have actually generated a great deal of bad will toward our culture and society that doesn't really represent the full American public. And so starting from that orientation, I then ran for statewide office in 2012 for the Michigan State Board of Education. I was an elementary school teacher in Chicago, and that was in the 1960s. And we were actually supposed to be starting the new math then, and it was a good idea. It's still pretty much a good idea, although I'm not sure that every kindergarten child, even on a farm, needs to count to 100, but we can talk about that later. I did get 107,000 votes across the state, and I want to thank every single person that voted for me, very much appreciated, and that encouraged me to continue on in the statewide political arena. And I'm very proud of Paul, who is a private entrepreneur. He's a caterer and also an instructor in food preparation techniques. I am actually a licensed physician in Michigan for about 35 years, and I continue my license, but I'm not active in practice. I try to participate in various appropriate committees, one of which I participated in was the Genesee Schools, Safe Schools Coalition, because I had been a school teacher, and of course we're also concerned about communicable diseases in schools and so on and so forth. But that's my background.
Tell me why you're running for lieutenant governor before we get into the libertarian part, because I want you to explain that too. But talk about your decision to run for lieutenant governor.
Well, I like lieutenant governor because I like to support a strong gubernatorial candidate, and I find that in Mary Buzuma. She has a lot of interesting perspectives. She's been with this state party only for a few years, and having been for a while when she was serving in the Navy, spent a lot more time in Virginia. So she kind of brings a fresh perspective to our party. And I wanted to make sure that people understood the lieutenant governor is an office on its own, in addition to the gubernatorial office. Since you vote for both at the same time, a lot of people don't really recognize that as an office. But for instance, the major parties actually nominate their lieutenant governors separately. I also feel that it helps that I'm on the east side of the state and Mary's on the west side of the state, that we can make sure that we reach out to people more fully around Michigan. And finally, I, like in all times, like to go and push for a better understanding of the Libertarians' agenda and what we seek to do for Michigan.
Which leads us to our next question. What is that agenda, and what do you want to do for Michigan?
Well, our general agenda is that we support less government, more individual liberty, and that usually means reducing the amount of laws that interfere with people's personal behaviors as well as their private finances. We don't necessarily think every law should go away. We think there's some laws that make sense, laws that protect people. The proper role of government should be to protect people from violations of rights by others. But our government tries to do a whole lot more than that. It tries to take on the role sometimes of business, sometimes of a church, roles that are already served by institutions that I just named. We also believe some functions of the government are outright harmful. We don't believe that regulating people's personal behaviors by force is a good idea. We don't think it really helps enhance a sense of civility among individuals in a society, and we don't believe it even helps the people that it's designed to help. We don't believe that the government should be picking winners and losers in business, and yet we have a state government that, through organizations such as the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, for instance, works to help out certain businesses, which means those who aren't being helped out then become at a bit of a disadvantage. So we believe the free market is the most business-friendly environment, and the way to be business-friendly isn't to do any special favors or special breaks for a given business, but to make things more fair and less restrictive across the board.
More from the candidates who are not running as Republicans or Democrats when we come back to The Point. Welcome back to The Point. This morning we're featuring candidates that are running for statewide office that are not Republicans or Democrats, but so-called third-party candidates. We continue that discussion. You have run for office before.
Yes.
And you know that running for Attorney General is a big undertaking. What motivates you to run?
What motivates me is that I don't see the job as being done right. I see the job of Attorney General. Well, the Attorney General is the top attorney for the state. That should mean more than just representing the top officials only. It should be the Attorney General for the people. And that's what I want to be.
What issues do you see with, I assume you're talking about the current Attorney General, what issues do you see that he is dealing with that you think are not being done properly?
Well, I think he has been part of an effort, whether it's a consciously coordinated effort or not, to overlook or ignore political powers of the people. The state constitution does say all political power is inherent in the people. Right at the start it does. But with all the cutbacks that have been made in rights for recall, the attempts at trimming down and getting around initiatives and referendums, and even some changes to voting in elections themselves, that is a big area where the people's power has been being diminished by those who have the power now and then don't want to give it up, I think.
Talk to me a little bit about the Green Party. I know you've been involved for a very long time.
Yes.
What if you were walking up to somebody's front door and doing the time-honored tradition of politicians knocking on doors, and somebody says, "That's interesting. Tell me, what is the Green Party?"
Well, the Green Party is a party that is founded on a number of basic values. We have a list of 10 key values, and the top 4 of them we call the 4 pillars. Grassroots democracy and social justice are the 2 that are most directly related to my own race this year. But the other 2 are ecological wisdom and nonviolence.
I think a lot of people think of the Green Party and they think about that ecology part, and obviously that is a big part of what you do.
Certainly it is. It's just not all. That's not
Yeah,
it.
right. Environmentally, where are we in this state? Are we somewhere near where you are comfortable in protecting things like the Great Lakes and our groundwater and those things?
I would prefer to do a good deal more protection. Water, particularly the Great Lakes, there is actually a public trust doctrine that does exist and has been recognized at some times, but it has not been respected quite as much as it should be here. I would also be interested in particular in such issues as horizontal fracturing and fracking issue. We need to do a good bit more protection in that area, if only on the precautionary principle. And in fact, one of my fellow candidates, Ellis Bowles, running up for 1st District Congress, also an attorney, has done a good bit of analysis on the ability of local governments to actually institute bans on drilling. There is at least some evidence on language in the statute, particularly in the zoning law, that while they may not be able to regulate how drilling is done, they can regulate where drilling is done.
I'm always interested in knowing why candidates decide to run, and particularly in a universe where Republicans and Democrats dominate the landscape.
Sure.
There's an open U.S. Senate seat. You are on the ballot. Tell me how you came to that decision.
So I've been a libertarian activist for a long time. So I've always had a plan of making a bigger impact to try to spread the message. So I'm not running to get a shiny badge to try to tell people, how to run their life. I'm running primarily to educate Michiganders on the life we could have if we eliminated force for political and social gain.
Talk to me about that message. Talk to me about the libertarian viewpoint, because there are more than a few libertarians who try to find their way and exist within the Republican Party because they believe that's a way that they can get their message out. You've chosen to do it through the Libertarian Party. So what is that message?
And there's libertarians who are involved all over the place, whether they're in the Libertarian Party, the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party, because the libertarian message of less government goes across economic lines. It's not just about your pocketbook, it's also about your bedroom. I've chosen to stay my main focus within the Libertarian Party, primarily because that's where I found libertarianism. I personally tried to do the Ron Paul revolution work in the Republican Party thing, and the battles there were for very small things, and I felt at the time that it would have been easier to just try to fight to eliminate the whole system than to try to fight within the GOP. I never will go against an activist who's doing what he or she feels is best to fight for a more free society, but I think that for Michigan, the Libertarian Party is your only option if you really want a political solution to less government.
How does that translate into our lives on a daily basis? What would be different if you and like-minded libertarians were elected to office?
So I think one of the first aspects we'd be able to get past, something that I think the more I work on it, the more people realize it's a good solution, is the elimination or the separation of marriage and state. This is the idea that the government should treat everyone as individuals, whether they're married, single, gay, or straight. It's an idea that I think almost eliminates the so-called gay marriage debate. And it's the idea that we see that the real challenge to marriage isn't the establishment of a homosexual union. The biggest challenge is divorce. And so to avoid that if we only have marriages that people are doing for other reasons besides tax benefits, whatever, we'd eliminate that problem. And I think if you let them fight long enough, liberals and conservatives say the libertarians are right on this one.
It's a big undertaking, perhaps made bigger by the fact that you're not running as a Republican or a Democrat. So, what makes you want to do something on that large of scale, and what's it been like for you so far?
Wanted to run not as a Republican or Democrat because I, in a long time of activism, have not felt really voiced by either one of those. And that's something I'm hoping to change. Traditionally now, politics seem to be heavily relied on who's got enough money. And so this is an anti-money campaign, not asking for any donations for the campaign, asking for people to donate for their local causes, and if elected, will only work under poverty wages.
That's an interesting concept because so much time is spent by major party candidates and other parties as well raising money, yet the reality is that it costs money to run for office, and particularly to run and win. So what is your view? Obviously you're trying to do a grassroots kind of thing, but how do you get your message out?
Social media is incredible. Twitter, you can do unimaginable things with Twitter. Same thing with Facebook, and actual grassroots organizing too. I've spent the last 3 years not just saying I'm an activist, but dealing with frontline communities in Detroit, back in Kalamazoo, up in Traverse City, and getting those grassroots networks. So I feel like that carries a lot more than $20 million or $16 million in the campaign.
Tell me about what you would like to see change. You talk about activism. What is your activism? What is your passion?
Well, my passion, of course, growing up on the Kalamazoo River is Enbridge Energy, Inc. and tar sands in Michigan. The Line 5 up in the Straits of Mackinac terrifies me. The energy.
You're talking about the oil pipeline that runs under the Mackinac Bridge.
Yes. From their own admission, Enbridge has said that it would take 8 minutes to shut the pipeline if it ruptures. If that happens with an 8-minute shutoff, they've said that'll spill 1.5 million gallons, and that would go into the Great Lakes. We have a $17 billion tourism industry that doesn't count our agriculture, and it doesn't count the clean water for 30 million people. So that's definitely something I want to see realistically regulated and given proper attention.
When you look at the environment in general, you mentioned the Kalamazoo River where there was a spill, and the cleanup in some cases still continues. Mm-hmm. But what larger environmental issues are you interested in that you don't think are being paid enough attention to?
Well, I think as far as larger scale, and in most areas, top to bottom from our government, we need to start looking at transition and start looking at locally led transition. For environmentalism, that's alternative energies. And I think how you realistically bring in alternative energies is at a local level. Start giving subsidies to new business. Michigan has so much environmental possibility. And we have a working base that's historic here. I think we could be a global leader in alternative energies, and I think it could be an economic and environmental move.
We're back with more To The Point in just a moment. So this morning you met some of the other candidates on the ballot, and there are still more. You can find out exactly how many more by going to michigan.gov and looking for a sample ballot so you know exactly what your choices are when you head to the polls or get that absentee ballot. Hope you'll join us next week as we get closer and closer to Decision 2014. We'll take a look at the run for the United States Senate. An open Senate seat's a big deal. We'll be talking about that when you join us next Sunday. To The Point.